G'day guys, this is Tyrone and welcome back to another Fallout 76 build video. This build is called the Warlord and is going to show you how to be as brutally effective as you possibly can with the new weapon known as the Pepper Shaker. The Warlord build allows you to deal max damage with this weapon whilst retaining its tank-centric roots. With this build you'll be able to take a heavy hit and dish out one straight back at the enemy. In addition, you will be able to stagger and cripple everything in your path without effort. Now obviously, to achieve this I will be taking the bloodied low health route. But I will showcase options towards the end of the video if low health is not quite your style. And as always, the timestamps will be on screen and in the description so that you can skip to the parts of the video that you need. Additionally, the link to this build will be in the description via the Nukes and Dragons build planner, so make sure to utilize that if you need to. Also, friendly reminder, this variant build can be one of your many builds thanks to the perk loadout machine as you can see here. Speaking of, I have many other builds that you can find in my builds playlist in the description if the Warlord isn't quite what you're looking for. Anyways, as always I will have this build's strengths and weaknesses catalogued in a star ranking system so that you can see easily if this is something you want to work towards. Without further ado, let's get into it. Like I said earlier, the purpose of this build is to deal as much damage as we possibly can with the Pepper Shaker. For those that don't know, this is a very unique weapon, acting as a hybrid between a shotgun and a heavy gun, which requires a completely unique build to achieve optimization. So we will be utilizing parts of a shotgunner build and parts of our heavy gunner build. And by the time you're done creating your own version of the Warlord with this video, you'll be a devastating combatant on the battlefield. The benefits that come with this build is maximum Pepper Shaker damage, an unshakable defense, get it? And incredibly efficient crippling and staggering utility advantages. Which basically means every single shot you shoot will stagger and cripple multiple enemies multiple times on multiple parts of their body. Now with all that said and done, let's move on to the special stats. So since this variant build is using my heavy gunner character as a base template, we will also be making use of one fully maxed out legendary special card. For me, I've chosen strength, but you can pick whatever you wish and split the difference with your special points yourself. For this build, you will need the following special points as a default, that being 10 strength, 3 perception, 5 endurance, 7 charisma, 9 intelligence, 11 agility, and 11 luck. This is what you will need to start off with to create the ultimate Pepper Shaker build, aka the Warlord. Now like I said earlier, I did use legendary strength, so with that taken into consideration, my strength will get raised to 15 at base value, but the rest shall remain the same. Now once everything is said and done, once we're finished with this build, once we take a look at the mutations, perks, armor and all of that good stuff, this build will be walking around with 13 strength, 3 perception, 6 endurance, 7 charisma, 5 intelligence, 15 agility and 11 luck. Obviously some special stats will be lowered since we will be using power armor to make full use of our Pepper Shaker. This means we will not be able to utilize the extra special stats that unyielding armor provides. Anyways, with this setup, we will be able to fully utilize the Pepper Shaker and power armor to deal the most damage we possibly can and remain as tanky as possible at the same time. This build is incredibly fun to use and brutally efficient at putting the hurt out on our enemies. Anyways, that's going to bring me to the perks section of this video. The perks we use here are the most important part of the entire build. Remember, I am min-maxing to get the most damage we possibly can with the Pepper Shaker. That is what this whole build is centered around. The Pepper Shaker is our min-max priority, while tanking will be a secondary priority. Let's get into it. Alrighty, so here we are with the build. Take a screenshot right now if you want to use this for a later reference, or again go down in the description and go to the Nukes and Dragons build planner if you want to see the perks. But aside from that, let's get into it and I'll start explaining every single perk and why we have chosen it. So first and foremost, the heavy gunner perks. I have chosen to max out all of the heavy gunner perks. You can do this with the shotgun ones if you want, but the heavy gunner ones were the ones I already had maxed out on this build since this was my heavy gunner originally. Picking up all of these will grant us a 60% increase in our Pepper Shaker damage, which is obviously what we're aiming for here. This entire build is centered around dealing the most damage we possibly can with the Pepper Shaker. So from there we have 15 strength, which is obviously the maximum amount of strength points that we can make use of, and I've chosen to fill them up with a mix match of numbered shotgunner perk cards. As you can see, we have one of them at rank 2, one of them at rank 3, and one of them at rank 1. Now mathematically speaking, this combination right here of shotgunner cards and heavy gunner cards, or vice versa, whatever you choose to do, will be the maximum amount of damage you can give yourself. Now the reason we have rank 1 of one of the shotgunner cards instead of just fully ranking up another one is because of this. As you can see, as we rank them up, you only gain 5% extra damage per rank, whereas the first rank will give you plus 10% damage. Basically, in short, this combo of cards here will give you the most bang for your buck, damage-wise. I know it might be confusing for some people to wrap their head around, but shotgunner cards and heavy gunner cards both affect the damage of the pepper shaker. Sadly, because we only have 15 strength, we cannot make use of maxing out every single one of the shotgunner cards, as well as every single one of the heavy gunner cards, which means sadly we have to make sacrifices like this, and do a weird little mismatch of having rank 1 of the cards and rank 2 of the cards. Whatever one you pick to be that rank 1 and rank 2, it won't matter as long as you have rank 1 of a card, rank 2 of another card, and then every single one of the other ones will be rank 3, you'll be just fine and you'll be kicking goals. Picking up all of these cards here in strength will grant us 105% extra damage with our pepper shaker. Next up in perception, we have chosen Skeet Shooter. This is all we really need here. This will give us an insanely accurate shot. With our pepper shaker, it will make our hip fire and our aim down sights accuracy really tight, the pellets will be really tight, and you'll be able to hit the targets no matter how far away it is. Basically, with the Skeet Shooter perk and another perk that I'll get into in a little bit, you will have insanely accurate shots with the pepper shaker. Next up we have Endurance. Obviously we're going to be taking max rank of Fireproof. I never make a build without this perk, it's just so useful, so handy, 45% less damage from explosions and flame attacks. I'm never not going to pick this up, especially for a tank-centric build like the pepper shaker build. Also in Endurance we have Rejuvenated. This is basically going to synergize with our Overeater's Power Armor, which I'll get into later on in the video. Basically with this perk, when our hunger and our hydration levels are fully maxed out, we will be getting a lot of bonuses. We will get 1 to Strength, 1 to Endurance, 45 HP, 45% faster AP regeneration, and a combination of 90 disease resistance, which is really nice. Next up in Charisma, we have Strange in Numbers. We are never not going to pick this up, it's really useful. It's going to make all our mutations 25% stronger if we are on a team with mutated teammates. Now, as you guys know, this only works when we're on a team, so I will have an option later on in the video to showcase when we are solo. Additionally, we're going to be picking up Suppressor. This works really well with this build in particular. We're going to be shooting everything, all our pellets are going to be flying everywhere, shooting all the enemies in the area, and once we hit all those enemies, they're going to be doing 30% less damage to everything they shoot at, including us, which is going to be very useful. It's going to keep us alive, it's going to keep our teammates alive. It's just a very nice utility perk to have, especially since the secondary theme of this build is tanking, so we're going to pick this up. In a similar fashion, we're going to be picking up Tenderizer. Now this is a very amazing perk, especially with this build because of the same reasons I mentioned before with the Suppressor. We're going to be shooting everything, all our pellets are going to be hitting everything, whether or not we mean it. So when we hit stuff, those enemies are going to be taking 10% more damage. Not just by us, by our teammates, by everything else that may attack them, whatever it may be, they're just going to be taking 10% more damage, and that is multiplicatively. Now also, because this is a multi-pellet weapon, sometimes we can activate multiple stacks of the Tenderizer perk card, which will max out at 40%. I'm not sure if this is a glitch or if it's just something that's intentional. The way it's been explained to me is it's intentional and it's been in there since the start of the game. Whatever, when we shoot enemies with multiple pellets, they'll end up taking 40% more damage. Cool, that's very useful with this build because we shoot a lot of pellets with our gun. Moving on to Intelligence now, we have Nerd Rage. Now this is a bloodied build, obviously, doesn't say it in the title, but it is a bloodied build, so we're going to be taking this perk. While we are below 20% health, we're going to gain 40 damage resistance, 20% extra damage, and 15% faster AP regeneration. I don't need to list out why this is important for the build. All of these things are incredibly useful, especially for this tank-centric build. Now, as I said at the start of the video, don't worry, I'll have options if you don't want to play bloodied. Next up, we have Stabilized. Now this is one of the perks that synergize well with the Pepper Shaker. This works in combination with Skeet Shooter, so we gain another massive boost to our accuracy, making our pellet spread with the Pepper Shaker insanely accurate. With Stabilized and Skeet Shooter, it's almost like we've popped a few doses of the Formula P Chem. But that's not the main attraction to this perk. Why we're really picking this up is because it gives us 45% armor penetration. That's right, the Pepper Shaker Heavy Shotgun is now officially the first shotgun in the game to make use of an armor penetration perk card. And let me tell you, it works so well with shotguns. Shotguns are in dire need of a armor penetration perk card, and you'll see why it works so well when you use Stabilized. Basically, if your goal is damage with the Pepper Shaker, you're gonna want to hop in Power Armor and you're gonna want to use this. The armor penetration is almost more useful than all of our Shotgunner and Heavy Gunner perk cards combined. It's just that good to have armor penetration, especially on a weapon like this. So definitely don't pass this one up. Then next up we have batteries included. Now it wouldn't be a heavy build if we didn't have this, we definitely need it thanks to our fusion core usage with the power armor, but additionally we're going to be using this for our weapon anyway, because we're either going to be using the laser magazine or the plasma magazine on our pepper shaker. Both of those fall under the energy weapon ammo category, so it's going to be reducing that ammo by 90% as well. Moving on to agility, we have Enforcer. Yes, that's right, Enforcer works with the pepper shaker. Using this will grant us a 15% chance to stagger and a 30% chance to cripple a limb. Now what you guys might not know is this stacks with another perk which I'll get to in the luck tree, and I'll break it down further there once we get to it. But basically, each pellet we shoot, and there's 8 of them with this shotgun, each pellet we shoot will have a 15% chance to stagger and a 30% chance to cripple a limb independently of each other. So if all pellets hit, you're gonna have a massive chance to stagger and a massive chance to cripple. Next up, we're picking Adrenaline. Maxing this out will give us a massive boost to our damage. Basically, we gain 10% extra damage every kill we get, maxing out at 6 kills. We will gain 60% extra damage for 30 seconds, and it will refresh every time we get a kill. This is another one of those perk cards that you never want to not use if you're a damage focused build. So since our focus here is damage with the pepper shaker, we're going to be picking this up, we're going to be killing enemies left, right and bloody center, and we're going to be racking up those adrenaline points. Basically we will have this extra 60% damage at all times. Next up we have Dodgy. Now this is a very useful perk for our tank centric nature. With this perk we will avoid 30% of incoming damage at the cost of 30 action points per hit. As a tank, this is one of those must-have perk cards. It's going to make us a whole lot more tanky and a whole lot harder to put down. Moving on to luck, we have Bloody Mess. Maxing this out will give us 15% bonus damage to our pepper shaker. In reality it's not much, but it's worth picking up if your goal is to deal the most damage as humanly possible. As I've been stating throughout this video, every little bit of percentage helps. Oh yeah, and because of how many pellets we shoot, that means each pellet will have an independent chance to make enemies explode into a gory red paste, so you're gonna see a lot of enemies explode. Next up is One Gun Army. Now this is that perk that synergizes with Enforcer. Taking this will give us another 12% chance to stagger and another 12% chance to cripple a limb, and that is per pellet. So with the One Gun Army perk combined with the Enforcer perk, you will have a 27% chance to stagger per pellet and a 42% chance to cripple a limb per pellet. That's mind-bogglingly powerful. Essentially, even if only one of your pellets hit a limb, that's almost a half chance that it's going to cripple. And that's almost a quarter chance that it's going to stagger. So if all 8 of your pellets hit the same limb, it's going to stagger and it's going to cripple it. Basically, if your pellets spread out all across the body, one shot could cripple every single limb on that enemy's body, that being the head, the torso, both arms and both legs. You could cripple everything with one shot if you're lucky enough, and that's just absolutely insane. Basically, these 2 perks right here are the reason why the pepper shaker is so fun to use. This is the reason why this gun is such a huge utility item. I'm going to go into more detail later on in the video about this, but taking these will make you a valuable asset during the Scorched Earth event and the Earl Williams fight. You can cripple both of the bosses easily, you can make Earl Williams stand still so that he can just get peppered on, no pun intended, and you can force the queen to land every single time she stands up. If there are multiple people using these perks with a pepper shaker on the queen, she is never going to fly around, she is always going to be landed. So if you're one of those people that does fight the queen fairly often, I recommend having one of these in your back pocket or having someone with one of these in their back pocket to just force the queen to land. It's such a useful item. Anyways, moving on, next up we have Ricochet. This is a very useful tank perk. It's basically an 18% chance to take no damage from ranged attacks. Every time you get shot at by a laser, a plasma bolt, a bullet, or something ranged, something stupid, you have an 18% chance for it to do no damage. Also, handy tip, if you are using a vampire's weapon in your hands, and if you're using this build that should be a vampire's pepper shaker, then that 18% chance of reflection will actually heal you as well, which is really cool. I have a video going into detail about that, and I'll put it in the top right. And lastly for this build we have Starch Genes. You need this on every build just to keep our chosen mutations, so yeah, I'm not going to go into much detail for that. So those were the perks this build uses. If you follow it perk for perk exactly as I've laid out, then you will have set yourself up to be a devastatingly powerful foe. You'll be dealing as close to max damage as we can possibly realistically achieve with the pepper shaker, and you'll be able to stagger and cripple all of the enemies in your path with only a few shots, granting incredibly powerful, useful support and utility benefits. But with all my builds, I like to provide you guys with options, so if you aren't too concerned about squeezing every last drop of damage out of the Pepper Shaker, then you could lower all of the shotgunner cards down to rank 1. Doing this will grant you 30% extra shotgun damage still, but will also free up 3 perk points in strength to chuck in something else. You could use Scattershot to reload 30% faster, also making your Pepper Shaker weigh 90% less, or you could slot in Blocker for more defense against melee combatants. The choice is yours really, but as I said beforehand, I do prefer to get as much damage as I possibly can. And to do that, we will need to get the 3 different ranks of the shotgunner perk cards in there with our heavy gunner cards. Anyways, finally in Charisma, like always, we can slot out Stranger Numbers and Suppressor for max rank of Lone Wanderer and vice versa, depending on if we are in a team or not. Besides that, there is nothing else I wish to add or change to this build in all honesty. It does its job and it does it well. Next up, we are going to be discussing the legendary perk cards, so let's get into that. Alrighty, now let's talk about the legendary perk cards. Those of you that have watched my previous video, the Dreadnought, will know that this build we are using right now is based from that one, so I'm not going to be changing the legendary perk cards too much since basically the same character, and basically the same perk cards do affect the same build, so nothing really needs to be changed. However, I will go over everything one more time, and I will talk about one change I have made. So firstly, we have Far-Flung Fireworks. I understand some of you don't like this perk, however, I think it's very useful. At max rank, it's basically a 20% chance to deal extra damage to a large group of enemies, or maybe even one enemy. I've explained it before, and I'll explain it again. This perk is basically just a 20% chance to proc an AoE attack that does a massive amount of damage to all of those within it. But hey, if you don't like it, if it's not your style, if you don't like making things go boom, feel free to use something else. Then next up we have Power Armor Reboot. At max rank, this is a 40% chance to literally just not die. There's no other way to explain it. With this maxed out, if you do die, there's almost a half chance that you just don't die. You automatically revive yourself, there's no animation, there's no timer, there's no nothing, you just don't die. And some people did get confused with this in my last Power Armor build video. No, this does not proc Revenant sadly, so keep that out of the comments. It doesn't proc Revenant, so don't try to put that into the build. You're not going to die, and you're not going to get revived with this thing, and it's not going to proc Revenant. Anyways, our secondary goal with this build is to be a tank, and I guess not dying falls under one of the categories a tank should be good at. So if something does go wrong and you do die, like I said, there's a 40% chance that that just won't happen and that mistake will just not matter. And for that reason, we're going to be picking it up every single time when we're in a Power Armor build. Next up, we have Tanking One for the team, and I've finally maxed it out, guys. So with this, we will be dealing 40% extra multiplicative damage to all of the enemies that do attack us. Be that enemies that hit us, that shoot us, that fire at us with laser beams, with fire, explosions, poison, whatever it may be. If an enemy hits us, if an enemy damages us, they will be taking 40% more damage, multiplicative damage, from all incoming sources, not just us, but that includes our team as well. So as a tank, as one of the people that are going to be right in the middle of the fire, we're going to be picking this up. It's going to be very useful. Especially since we're using a Pepper Shaker. I mean, it's basically an automatic shotgun. We're gonna want to be close to the enemy. I mean, we have to be close to the enemy to deal maximum damage with the Pepper Shaker because the damage drop off is so intensive. So that's another reason why we will be making massive use out of this. Next up, we have Electrical Absorption. At max rank, this is a 20% chance to heal yourself with energy attacks and refuel your Power Armor's Fusion Core. I know it doesn't say on here that it heals you, but trust me guys, it does. Every time you get shot by a laser, a plasma bolt, a beam of electricity, something along those lines, you will get healed a small amount of health. And as a tank, that's going to be very useful. It's going to keep us alive, so we're going to want to pick that up. So then we have Legendary Strength. I mentioned at the start of the video why I picked this up. It's basically just my flex spot so that I can get 5 more perk points worth of perks down in my regular perk cards. You don't have to use Legendary Strength here. You can use Legendary Intelligence, Legendary Luck, Legendary Agility, whatever you want, and just move the points from whatever you have chosen to where it needs to be the same as what I've recommended in this build. Basically, Legendary Strength allows me to remove 5 points from Strength in the base skill tree, put 2 of those points in Endurance and 3 of them in Charisma, so that I can get Rejuvenated and Suppressor. That's basically what I've done with this Legendary perk card, and then obviously, those 5 points came back into Legendary Strength, bringing it back up to 15 once I did get that Legendary perk card maxed out. And then finally we have Survival Shortcut. Now in this place I did have Funky Duds, but I've decided to remove that since we never really took damage from poison anyway, and we are making use of our Overeater's Power Armor. So a few people suggested to me that I should be making use of survival shortcut. This is one of the rare situations where using this legendary perk, which I would normally consider useless, would actually be useful. Having a chem delivered into my inventory that instantly fills up my hunger and hydration bars is very useful, especially since when those are full, we get 30% damage reduction with our Overeater's power armor. And I'll get into all that later on in the armor section, but basically, even rank 1 of survival shortcut will be very useful for a power armor build that utilizes Overeater's power armor. Now, I've only recently become convinced that this is a good perk, so you may not need convincing, you may already be using this, or you may not want to use it at all, you may hate it, you may just not want to use it because you think it won't be useful to you. Whatever, that's fine. Just use whatever you want here in this spot if you don't want to use survival shortcut. However, like I said, I've been recently convinced that it's good for this build, and I'm going to use it from now on. And that was our legendary perk cards. As you can see, it is not much different than my original heavy gunner build. Nothing was really required to be changed, which makes things nice and simple. Next up, let's talk about the mutations the build uses and why we use them. Firstly, you may have noticed we did not pick up Class Freak for the simple reason being it is useless and the 3 perk points it requires can be better spent elsewhere. Reason being, we only pick the mutations that benefit our build directly, and the negatives we do get don't actually matter for this build in particular. I'm going to repeat that in every single build video I do. Also, keep in mind we have chosen strange in numbers, so all of these perks will increase by 25% if we are on a team, which is very nice. Anyways, let's get started. Obviously, we will be using Adrenal Reaction. This will make our Stimpaks slightly more effective while at low health, and will grant us up to 50% extra damage as our health decreases, which is synergizing brilliantly with our build here, since we will be bloodied and want all the damage we can get. Next we have Bird Bones. Essentially, this is needed if you wish to avoid the constant stagger landing animations that happens when you fall from a slightly higher than normal height. Ideally, you can go without this, but like I said, I prefer not to be animation locked every time I jump. Next, we will be rocking Carnivore. This is also not necessary, you can go with either Herbivore or Carnivore for this build, it doesn't really matter. We won't be utilizing any food buffs for our combat effectiveness, so use whatever is easiest for you to keep your hunger satiated. Next we have Marsupial. This grants us 20 extra pounds of carry weight and a massive jump height increase. This is an incredibly useful mutation as you all know. Then next we have Plague Augur. This will be used as well just in case we get a disease. This will allow us to deal a little bit of AoE damage to enemies that venture a little bit too close to us. Which is always useful, it's nice to have a little bit of extra damage going out. And then finally we have Scaly Skin. Essentially, use this to increase our overall damage resistance and energy resistance by 50. This will make us a little bit tankier, which is very nice. This will make us a little bit tankier at the cost of some AP, which won't matter for this build in the long run. Now, all of these mutations will be directly benefiting the playstyle we have set ourselves here. Also, I feel I should mention that we have not picked up Speed Demon here, because that mutation increases our starvation and dehydration levels 50% faster, which will not be good for us since we will be using Overeater's power armor, as I will discuss later on in the build. We also have not picked up Grounded, since that will reduce the energy damage our Pepper Shaker does. But as always, what I have stated here is just my recommendations for this build. As always, you're free to do as you wish and pick whatever mutations you want. Next up, let's talk about the weapon. Obviously, we are going to be using the Pepper Shaker. That's a given. That's what this whole build is centered around. Now, straight off the bat, is it the most powerful gun in the game? No. There are other options out there that could out DPS the Pepper Shaker quite easily. But this weapon is a lot of fun to use and can hold its own quite nicely in the damage department. Not to mention, once again, the crippling and staggering chance from Enforcer and One Gun Army combined is through the roof. That alone gives this gun a lot of utility value for support. Basically, if you use this build and this weapon, you're going to be a tremendous asset to your team and the server during boss events. You will be able to stagger and cripple every single limb on every boss in an instant. This means you'll be able to keep Earl Williams stationary, and you'll be able to keep the Queen grounded, which is very useful for obvious reasons. Anyway, as I mentioned in my Pepper Shaker Complete Guide video, the best legendary effects to aim for would be Bloodied if you're low health, or Anti-Armor or Aristocrats if you're full health. Then for the second star, you could either aim for 25% faster fire rate for more sustained DPS, or you could aim for 25% more damage while aiming for more per shot damage. Both are very good options, however I do prefer the faster fire rate if I had the choice. Then for the third star, ideally you would want either 15% faster reload or 90% reduced weight. Obviously, faster reload will be more combat effective, But you know me, I can't collect heavy weapons without the 90% reduced weight effect. So that's going to be the one that I'm aiming for. Basically, any combination of the previously suggested legendary effects will treat you very well and allow you to deal out optimal damage under your desired playstyle. However, in saying this, we should not discount the utility and support value that the Vampire and Medic's legendary effect has with this gun. If you put on the single barrel to increase your pellet count up to 16, then that means you will be able to heal yourself 32% of your health per shot with the Vampire's effect, assuming of course all of the pellets hit the enemy. And then with the Medic's effect, you will be healing yourself and your teammates by 80% of their health per critical hit, which basically turns you and your whole team immortal. So yeah, just keep those two tips in your back pocket. Now as for weapon mods, I feel the best overall option would be to go with the Hex Barrel. Even if it does lower our base damage, the increase to fire rate improves our overall DPS by a huge margin. But obviously if you'd rather more damage per shot, then go with the Dual Barrel. Additionally, I'd only ever recommend using the single barrel if you're playing a support role with a Vampire's or Medic's effect. It's just not worth using when it comes to damage, since the single barrel does inadvertently make us deal far less damage due to the way our Pip-Boy damage is evenly distributed amongst the weapon's pellets. Now as for the weapon magazine, your best option would be the Laser Mag. It grants the same bonus energy damage as the Plasma one, but the projectiles are hit scan here with the laser, which means they hit where you're aiming instantly, instead of having a projectile travel time like the Plasma ones. Then for the sight, just pop on the gunner sight for 15% less AP cost in VATS. It's the only option we got, we might as well use it. Okay, so if you get your hands on a God Roll Pepper Shaker and use the correct mods with the correct perk cards like I have laid out here, then you will be mowing your way through the wasteland easily without a worry in the world, so enjoy it. Next up is the topic of armor. Obviously we are going to be using power armor. Simply, if your goal with this gun is to deal damage and you're not using power armor, then you're honestly doing it wrong and you should just stop and reevaluate the choices you made that got you into the position you're currently in. For the simple reason being, power armor grants us 45% armor penetration with the stabilized perk card with this weapon, which this weapon sorely needs to benefit from to be as effective as I'm displaying here in this video. Without the armor penetration, you will notice a serious drop in overall power. That then brings us to the choice in power armor model. It's pretty easy for this build. We will be using Stranglerheart power armor because the bonus poison damage we gain from the Stranglerheart armor does stack per projectile for a small amount of time. I'm not sure if this is a bug or intentional, but you will notice the poison damage will be kicking in hard on the enemy health bars if you get all your pellets to hit. And that's simply the only reason I have for using Stranglerheart for this build. Sure, you can use whatever you want realistically, be that Hellcat, T65, or even XO1, but to get the most bang for our buck, due to the way poison damage benefits multi-pellet weapons, Stranglerheart is what I'm recommending for you guys for this build. Now as for legendary effects goes, there is no better option for power armor than going for a full set of Overeaters as the primary prefix. Getting a full set of this will grant us 30% damage resistance while our hunger and thirst are fully topped off, making us incredibly tanky. And then on top of that, we will ideally be aiming for the Sentinel's effect as the second star effect. Now a full set of this will give us a 75% chance to reduce our incoming damage by 75% while we are standing still. Again, making us incredibly tanky. In fact, this will make us so tanky, it's almost beyond the limits that should be actually achievable in this game. But anyways, I'm not going to complain. Then for the third star, we will ideally be aiming for faster AP regeneration. We all know how great this third star effect is. So if you do get yourself any power armor model with these legendary effects, then you'll basically be unkillable and impervious to most incoming damage. But if you happen to get the effects I've suggested here on Stranglerheart power armor, then you'll be right as rain and kicking goals, because that is your best possible option for this build. Now as for power armor mods, since this is a bloody build, I recommend you go for emergency protocols for the torso. While under 20% health, this will make us take 50% less damage from all incoming sources, and you'll also move at maximum movement speed. Now as for legs, I recommend grabbing calibrated shocks for an extra 100 pounds of carry weight capacity. The arms don't matter, so we won't even talk about them, there's no mods here that will benefit us. And then finally, the helmet. The Stranglerheart doesn't give you many options for mods here, so I guess I'm going to recommend the +2 to perception just for the bonus that one brings. But if you're not using Stranglerheart and you're using a different power armor model that allows different head mods, then I'd recommend using the targeting HUD so that all enemy NPCs will be bright red, essentially marking themselves. Now, as I said at the start, I would have a full health option for this build. I'll keep this quick and simple, because it is quick and simple. Basically, all you need to do to turn this into a full health build is make sure you don't use Nerd Rage, instead put those 3 points into Agility and use Born Survivor or whatever you want instead. As for mutations, just make sure you don't pick up Adrenal Reaction, and then obviously for weapons and armor, don't use a bloodied variant of the Pepper Shaker, instead use anti-armor, aristocrats or vampires, whatever you want, just make sure it's not bloodied. As for armor, our chosen armor model and effects will be fine, you'll just have to make sure that you don't use the emergency protocols. Instead, use the jetpack, kinetic dynamo, or even Tesla coils. The choice is yours. So there we go guys, this has been the Warlord build, aka the most damage optimized Pepper Shaker build that you will find on YouTube. Now before I end the video, I will just want to reiterate some points and explain something a little bit further. Firstly, the entire purpose of this build was to deal as much damage with the Pepper Shaker as we can. Then our secondary goal was to act as a little bit of a tank, which we have achieved here today in this video. Additionally, as I've mentioned many times at this point, this gun has brilliant utility value with crippling, staggering, and healing potential if you get the right legendary effects. Now, having said this, I do want to talk about how this is not a regular build, and this is not a regular build video. You may have noticed that this is not as long as my previous 3 updated build videos, and does not hold as much info. The reason for this is because this is a variant build, a niche build, you could even call it a gimmick build. And this is the first of many variant builds that I plan on releasing. I just want to make it clear here and now for you guys that my variant build videos will not dive deep into all the extra information when it comes to things like daily ops, mobbing, bossing, or buffs, and stuff like that. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, if you are building this for yourself, I strongly urge you to return to this video at any time and use the timestamps to find bits of information you are needing. Also, reminder that the link to the Nukes and Dragons build planner will be in the description along with my builds playlist if you want to see some of my other build videos. Anyways, that's it for the video. I hope you all enjoyed, and if you did, be sure to drop a like on the video, drop me a comment, and if you're new here and want to see more content like this, then make sure you're subscribed with post notifications turned on. A huge shout out to my channel members and Patreon supporters for making videos like this possible, and a huge shout out to the Distinction and Dr. Drosso for being top donators on Patreon. You're all legends. As always, the links to my social media are in the description along with the links to my Patreon and channel membership if you want to support me in a much larger way. I've been Tia, and I'll catch us in the next one. Welcome to Valhalla.